My mum was very promiscuous. I used to see and witness some things that no kid should see and witness. But my dad as well. I would sulk a lot as a kid. And I remember once he just tied me to a tree and left me there for a few hours. I felt like I'd found my people, found my tribe, all these other broken kids. I remember taking that smack, and it was everything I'd ever dreamed of. I was terrified of becoming a drug addict. I had people close to me that I had to inject when I was a little kid when they were clocking. And I can't believe I found the secret to life. The key to it is about being useful, because I was searching for so many years, but now I've found it.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Young. Young, thank you so much for being my guest today on this new episode of 12 Steps and 12 Questions. Before we get to your introduction, I'd very quickly just like to put something out there, which is that I'm keen to have more guests who are affected by different kinds of addiction. So if that's food or gambling or sex, anything really, as long as you're 12-stepped and an active member of your fellowship, just ping me an email on 12steps12questions@gmail.com. That's 12steps12questions@gmail.com, and we'll have a quick chat. The email is also in the show notes. And with that, and without much further ado, Young, would you like to introduce yourself quickly, please?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Silvio. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Young. I'm a 48, almost 49-year-old recovered drug addict and alcoholic. My sobriety date is Christmas Eve, 2018.
Thank you so much, Young. Let's get straight to it. Question 1 is, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
Oh, with a heavy one, Silvio. Thank you for that. Yes, I did. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. My mum is an alcoholic. So she didn't have the best parental skills. She has mental health issues also, which was very confusing as a child growing up in what was a very, or could be a very violent environment. Installed lots of fear into me. I used to get beat very badly, very badly. I often always go to my mum and, remember the moments when she beat me badly. There was a time at Christmas when I was 7 years old and I got a toy gun and I remember her smashing it around my head. But my dad as well. There was a few moments when my dad, I remember I would sulk a lot as a kid. And I remember once he just tied me to a tree and left me there for a few hours. And the effects of that, yeah. So the effects of that today, I've let go of all this resentment and anger, and it's taken a lot of work, and thank God for the 12 steps. But even today, Silvia, and I've never shared this before, only my partner knows this, I still can have this flinch. I can still flinch, and it goes back to being a kid when I was terrified. I can remember a time when I got beat and I think it was my mum or maybe my dad was wearing a ring and they hit me across the face and I had a big mark on my face and I was told what to say at school. You need to say this happened because if you don't, you're going to get taken away and in a children's home. And here's the crazy thing. That probably at that moment would have been the better option, but I was terrified of going into this kids' home. So yeah, there was a fair bit of violence and confusion in my childhood, for sure.
I've grown up in I think it's fair to say, in a small T trauma environment, right? There was trauma in my family, but it wasn't quite as overt as the traumas that you have suffered, right? So I find it almost a little bit difficult to sort of feel my way into this. I can't begin to imagine what it's like to be in fear every single day from such an early age. And I can well imagine that sort of thing doesn't really leave you much. Did you have any brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got two brothers and a sister. The older brother and sister have got different dads, and every one of those was affected by our childhood. Um, my oldest brother, who I'm estranged with because of him being a racist. I remember him saying, I'm never going to speak to our mother again. Um, the other two had their own issues, which I don't really want to get into because this is recorded just on the small chance, But they were all affected by it. They were all affected by it. And it's funny because I don't dwell on childhood anymore. I used to for years. I used to blame it for everything. I used to blame it for my addiction. I used to blame it for being so angry. And I know today it wasn't the cause of my addiction, but what it did create was, like you just said, this person, like a little boy at first, but then an adult who was full of fear, who was terrified of rejection, who was very confused, who was quite detached from things. So, yeah. But you know what? This is the thing. This is the miracle that has happened in my life, Silvio. From all that horrific stuff, and it was horrific. If I think back, I used to see some terrible things in my household. My mum was very promiscuous. I used to see and witness some things that no kid should see and witness, which really twisted my mind. My mum used to pretend. I laugh because it's just so out there. She used to pretend that she was Polish, right? She used to pretend that she was Polish, and she used to speak this gibberish to me in front of her friends. Now, the first time I met her mother, which I guess my grandmother, and I said, "So which part of Poland are you from?" And she said, "What? What do you mean? I'm Irish." And I think back to that, and I just think, what was my mum getting out of that? It's not even like, oh, yeah, I'm French or Italian. It's just really bizarre. And I don't, and imagine as a kid trying to work out this madness. Just absolutely baffling. Absolutely baffling. So it was, but you know what? That's what I was going to say. I thank God for every single one of those moments, because it's made me who I am today. I'm uniquely placed where I understand guys that come and share their stuff, when we do a step 5, and I say, yeah, I get it. I get it. And it's strange to even be able to say that today.
Yeah, I bet it must be strange to say that today. And we're not going to jump ahead too much. I know every chance that, I might give you, going to jump straight into the present moment because that's what you do, and that's great. But let's just stay there just a little while longer, and let's come to our question 2. Now, question 2 is, what did the moment you first got hooked, the fun times, what did that look like? So here you are. You come from an extremely difficult background. Your mother is alcoholic. You're beaten, abused, really, right? So I'm assuming this probably didn't stop when you were 7. That's the story you're told, but sort of went on a bit further than that. At some point or another, substances or behavior were introduced into your life and they did something to you. So talk to us about that. The fun times, the moment you first got hooked.
And there was a lot of fun times. I loved drugs. I loved alcohol. So there's two sort of firsts that I can remember quite vividly. The first one was getting introduced to sniffing glue and aerosols at school when I was about 11 years old. And we did it first at school in the back of the class because I can see today I was a very troubled kid, hence why I kept getting kicked out of school, hence why I would behave the way I behaved, and I was called a loser, and I felt like I was really stupid. I know that's not true today, but that's how I felt throughout school. Just as a side note, I remember the careers officer, when you go at a certain age, he said, your ideal career, young, is a bingo caller. That's what they said to me. And they also put me in a special needs class when I went to college, you know. Anyway, so I get introduced to this gas, and then we would buy all these cans of gas and go and sit in car parks. There was a group of us, and take it. And I loved it. Suddenly, I ain't caring about what's going on at home. I'm feeling amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I got hold of some alcohol, and my sister was having a party in our house, and someone left a bottle outside. Jog. You know, we can talk about those words, sense of ease and comfort. Wow. I loved it from day one. I loved it. And I remember thinking, this is for me. This is heaven right now. So that was the first time.
It's super interesting. Do you know, I just remembered something that I sort of tried to, that I've forgotten for whatever reason, which is that when I was about 11 or 12 or maybe 10, you know, the bad kids at school, right, they'd be sniffing glue. And we would, I remember that people would say that, but, oh, no, he sniffs glue, or, you know, they sniff glue. And I sort of thought to myself, goody two-shoes that I was at that point, you know, I better stay away from those kids. Only took another 2 or 3 years until I've found all that stuff myself, you know. But it's really interesting that there's, even then it starts coming with a, it comes with stigma from the very first moment. You know, it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So those were your firsts. And then how did it slowly but surely progress from there?
And it's interesting and makes me smile when you say I was the bad kids. I was that kid that everyone's parents said, you're not allowed to go with that kid, you know. I was the kid that would say, Miss, can I borrow your pen? And I get the pen and I just smash it up in front. You know, when I look back at that behaviour, I was very, very disturbed and twisted. And it became my persona, the bad kid. And I lived up to it. The kid that would do the most crazy stuff. The kid that would light fires and set cars on fire and smash things up. And I can see it was just this acting out. So how that progressed, Silvio, when I was 16, just 16, I'd stopped going to school in the last year because I just couldn't be bothered with it. And so obviously a kid left to his own devices is going to be getting up to no good. And my dad had left, and my mum had moved in this guy into our house. And I used to just kick off to it because in my eyes, this stranger is now, you know, in my dad's house. That's how I was looking at it. So I would sort of smash his car up. I would literally go up to him with a blade and put it to him, go, I'm going to kill you. You know, I was really angry. And one day, you know, as a combination of me kicking off every single time I saw this guy, I went home and my mum had packed my bags and she said, I want you out. You know, I'm 16 years old, man. And that was quite a pivotal event for me. The woman that's give birth to me is now choosing a man over me, a child. And a friend of mine who was a few years older had this flat, and there was a spare room, and I moved in. And he was already a drug dealer, and it was, you know, 1990, something like that, when the acid house thing was kicking off. And he was selling hash and speed and acid and this new drug, fairly new drug to us anyway, called ecstasy. And so there was my in, Silvio. There was my into the drug game and to this world of acid house. So it already started progressing a few years from the glue and stuff. I'm smoking weed. I remember started getting introduced to acid at school and a little bit of speed. But now I'm into the daily kind of drug life, the alternative, because it was a very alternative world. I felt like I was part of something special. What I know now is I felt like I'd found my people, found my tribe, found all these other broken kids and all these other freaks and all these other weirdos, and I felt right at home with them. you know.
Yeah. I know that you said that you thank God for having those things happen to you, and I still find it difficult not to say that I'm sorry that these things have happened to you as young. It must have been very difficult, you know, even though, you know, today you look at them in a different way. It's interesting what you say then, that you found your tribe, you felt like you found your tribe. When I then finally also became the bad kid that nobody was supposed to hang out with and so on and so forth, I also felt that, it's such a moment for me, also the ecstasy pills and things. Those were such of real milestones, quote unquote, if you will. Did you, when you were that age, did you have any awareness at all that this wasn't, quote unquote, normal, or that there might be a downside to all of this? Was there any awareness there?
There was actually, Silvio. So I've got to mention this flat that I moved into, was just like this place where people would drop into with stolen goods, loads of random weird downer pills that I'd never taken. It was a real hub of activity. You can imagine a 16-year-old, so exciting. We're going to these raves every weekend around the country. We're taking this acid, this ecstasy, and I'm just absolutely loved up in that moment. It's just like, wow, this is amazing. Now, I don't know when this occurred, Sylvia. And when I say I started smashing them in. I mean, I'm putting acid under my eyelids on a Tuesday afternoon. I'm it's not just a weekend thing. Quite quickly. And I don't know how soon this was, but I remember one day, after doing a lot of acid, the traces you get on some acid, you get the kind of these traces. They were still there when I wasn't high. And also from doing the ecstasy, my head was feeling a bit not right. And also I'm doing a lot of speed, and that obviously brings on psychosis. And I knew I wasn't feeling right. So I thought, okay, what I'll do, I've got this calendar. I'm going to mark down every time I do an E or some acid. And I remember after 2 weeks looking at that and thinking, oh, I'm doing a lot. And this has just come to my mind. Because my flatmate started saying, you're taking too many drugs. And so I remember me and my friend Steve Morgan, who's dead now, we used to do acid in the week, but not tell anyone because we didn't want to get told off by our mates. You're doing too much in the week. Save it for the weekend. So quite early on, I'm probably 17 now. I'm starting to feel the effects of too many chemicals in my mind.
Wow, you've just brought something back that I really didn't expect, which is, I was about 17 as well, and I'd really discovered weed at that time, and it became such a pivotal thing for me. And, I thought it made me more creative, and I'd write better songs, or, be funnier or whatever, And I'd also have a diary where I would write down I just completely forgot about this. And it's probably somewhere in my mum's basement, with all the other skeletons, or the ones that, And I would write into this diary as well. And I also noticed that, bloody hell, man, this is like an everyday thing, It was a real thing that I remember the diary, and also that people were starting to say to me, dude, you're taking too much, you're taking it a bit to a place that you shouldn't take it to. So yeah, I can totally relate to that. How did it progress from there? I mean, it's quite a severe thing to do already, I suppose, when you're 17 and it's a Tuesday afternoon, you're putting acid under your eyelids. I think anytime you put acid under your eyelids, you've got a problem. But, how did it progress from there?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that flat, and we were selling a lot of drugs for kids our age. I'm not going to say, because I don't want to incriminate anyone, but we were able to borrow thousands of pounds off someone who had a business to buy our load of drugs, pay them back, have the profit. We'd have bin liners full of speed, kilos of hash. We were getting all these connections off these travelers, and we were going into different cities because we were only in a small town. How we didn't get arrested, I will never ever know. Seriously, I would never. Thank you, God. So how it progressed. So I ended up moving to Africa. It was divine. I would say it was a divine intervention of my auntie, God bless her soul. I was starting to feel pretty fucked up. My head was not good, Silvio, not good. I know I was probably in the midst of some psychosis. And she called me one day, or I got a message off her, because I certainly didn't have a phone. Although we did have some big block mobile phones at some time, thinking we're Tony Montana. And she said, "Oh, your dad needs you. He's not in a good place." He's not in a good place. I'm not in a good place. Anyway, because he divorced my mum. He was in Africa doing some military stuff. So I went and I thought, this is perfect. I can get away from feeling mental. I know it's these chemicals that I'm putting into my head. If I get away from them, I'll be all right. Of course, I'm smoking weed every day. A lot of weed, man. Well, it was mainly hash then. And so I ended up flying out to a place called Malawi. And there's a little story. I had very long hair because I was a raver. And when I flew into Malawi, it was ruled by this dictator called Dr. Banda. And I got pulled out by these security. And I thought, oh, shit, I've left some drugs in my bag. And they said, it's against the law of this country for men to have long hair. 2 choices. I'm either going to deport you back to London or I'm going to cut your hair off. And they literally hacked my hair off in the airport. And from then, within an hour of being on Malawi soil, I'd scored some Malawi gold weed. And then I lived in Mozambique, where there was a war going on, civil war. And what happened is I stopped taking chemicals because I couldn't get any chemicals, but I started drinking every day. That's when I can see this alcoholism kind of started from that moment. It was literally like that relief from drinking. I was just drinking and smoking weed every day. So after that, and I won't, because I could talk for hours on what happened there, because there was a lot of stuff that went down. And I started smuggling weed back from Africa, because you'd buy this weed for like nothing in dried out banana skins, cobs they used to call them, Malawi gold, these big, long, really strong. And so I'd start bringing that back to England. And then when I started coming back, cocaine started kind of appearing on the scene from the dealers that I was dealing the other drugs for. And so I remember getting introduced to cocaine. I don't know what year, maybe 93, something like that, 94 perhaps, I can't remember. But I remember this guy giving me a line, and I didn't think that much of it. But it gave me some energy and I felt all right. But then I started doing a little bit and I thought, this is great. I can use this, and I'm not fully committed like on a 12-hour trip, or when I do an E, I can still do, And so I started selling cocaine. And at that time, in the little town in Devon that I was in, there was no one or not many people selling cocaine. So, with cocaine, it's a very Moorish drug. The market, started taking off pretty quickly. And so did my love of cocaine. So I'm taking it every day, but I'm not going mental on it. I don't think I was at this time. I'm just kind of, I don't know, maybe half a gram a day or something like that. I'm drinking every day. But in my head, I'm not a drug addict. I'm not a junkie. Because in my head, junkies are only people who take heroin and crack cocaine, and I would never take those things. But I got a girl pregnant, and she had my son, my oldest son, who's in the fellowship now, which is amazing. And we lived together because I thought, this is what you do. I make this right. And I remember at that time, I'm drinking quite a lot at that time daily, and I'm doing cocaine daily. And I was selling the drugs, like I said. But one of my drug dealers was a heroin addict. And he always tried to keep it away from me. He was quite a successful heroin addict. He had a nice car, he had a nice motorbike, he had a nice apartment. I'm sure that didn't last long, but at that moment, that's where he was at. And one day, someone came up to me and said, "Young, I don't know how to say this to you. Your missus is cheating on you." Oh, Silvio. Oh. And the person she was it was like this group of older, cool guys of the town. And I felt like humiliated, rejected, all these things that I felt as a child. And so I remember going to my pal saying, Chris, I want some of that. And he tried to resist it for a long time, but I kept on and on and on at him.
I'm fascinated. I'm sorry to interrupt here at this crucial point, but I am fascinated that your reaction to this, I mean, is there a more addict way of reacting? Maybe even to get back at someone, in our heads at least, is there a more insane way of reacting than saying, instead of, I don't know, doing something else, whatever it is, maybe even confronting the person or whatever it is, to say, I'm gonna try out a different drug, the one that everyone's been trying to keep away from me, probably for good reason. It's such an addict. I just wanted to highlight that, what an addict way that is to respond to a difficult event.
Absolutely, Silvio. And I've never even really thought about that, about the insanity of that was my best. That's the best thing my head came up with. But now you're saying that. I remember Chris, and I went to him and he said, Young, look, because he was quite a connected guy, let's say. He was a nutcase. He said, right, I'll go around there, get a few pals, balaclavaed up, baseball bats, will do the geezer. And I said, no, I just want some of that. And when I'm thinking about this, Silvio, this was my in to that world, right? Because I was fascinated by that drug. I remember when seeing Zammo from Grange Hill. You remember Zammo, Just Say No. There was a storyline in Grange Hill in the 80s where this kid was hooked on heroin, and I remember being fascinated by it. And when most of the other kids in my year had posters of Public Enemy or Madonna, I had a poster of Zammo nodding out on heroin. So it was always my destiny, man.
Absolutely fascinating stuff, Young. Thank you for sharing that. Now, let's slowly but surely move over to our question 3, which is, what were your worst consequences and finally your rock bottom? Now, 2 caveats to that. One, we're obviously covering quite a long time, because I would imagine it took quite a while for you to get to that place. And of course, not everybody has a rock bottom. Many people have many rock bottoms. Most people don't even come, or many people don't even come in on the back of their rock bottom. But nonetheless, let's just work with that, right? What were your worst consequences and finally your rock bottom? So here you are, you're trying heroin for the first time as a result of feeling rejected and betrayed. What happened then? How did it progress?
Yeah, it took a while to progress, Silvio. I remember taking that smack that day, and it was everything I'd ever dreamed of. We hear people say that all the time. I felt like I was in the womb. It felt perfect. I think of that song, Perfect Day. Where is it? Lou Reed, is it? Perfect Day, But I was still scared of it. I didn't want to become a drug addict. I had people close to me that I had to inject when I was a little kid when they were clocking. I was terrified of becoming a drug addict, and I didn't want to. And so how it progressed, and I'll try and condense this in. I moved to London, and cocaine was really my thing, right? Cocaine and alcohol, mainly. Quite a lot of prescription pills along the way. And I would just flirt with heroin every now and again. Not that much though. And I became a DJ, and my career started taking off. I started, making money from that world and doing more cocaine. And I'm trying to think the first sort of cold turkey I did. I remember what happened. Because what used to happen, I would score off random people, and then if I was using 2 days in a row, I used to have rules. I would delete the numbers because I didn't want to become a junkie. And one day I went to see a guy, and he said, because I used to only buy tiny bits, and he said, all I've got is like eighths or quarters. And for someone who hasn't got a habit, that's a fair bit, Someone who's got a habit, it's not that much. So I bought it, and I used it all. It probably lasted me quite a while back then. And then when it ran out, I remember being sick, dope sick, as I know today. And I remember I wanted to cut my arms. I was so uncomfortable. And this would happen over and over as it probably, when I first took heroin, the first ever time I was 21, and I probably didn't have a habit until I was 30 years old.
Oh.
Like a daily habit.
Mm-hmm.
There was times where I'd get a little bit of a habit and I'd manage to come off, do a cold turkey at home for 72 hours and then not use for a bit. I'm using all the other drugs and I'm drinking a lot, but I'm just trying to stay away from that. So when I had a daily habit, I'm using daily and, I'm having to take heroin overseas because I'm doing a lot of overseas DJing gigs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making music. I'm nodding out in the studio. And the question was the consequences, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The consequences.
What were your worst consequences and finally your rock bottom?
So, we were sort of going places music-wise. We were really going places. And one of the consequences is I messed all that up. I messed what could have been. But that's not a big thing today. I created a life where I had a wonderful partner, 2 young children, had a nice home, had a nice car, all the material trappings. And the first consequence was her catching me taking heroin in the family home, and she didn't know that I was doing that.
Right.
And she chucked me out. That was the first consequence. The next consequence was I ended up losing most of my work and selling heroin and crack cocaine on the streets of Bethnal Green and Mile End and East London for a Bengali drug gang. And I'm just sitting in the car, driving around from 9 to 5, dropping off these drugs, smoking heroin and crack cocaine. Now crack has come into the equation. And it kept getting a lot worse. The end of my using, I didn't have any possessions. I wasn't eating for days on end. I was robbing people. I was committing crime. I was committing fraud. I was going around outside my estate, my tower block where I was living, picking up dog ends. I wanted to kill myself every day for the last year and a half of my using. I hadn't seen any, in that last year and a half, this is the consequences of my using and drinking. This is where it takes me. I hadn't seen a single person in that year and a half, apart from people that I'm robbing, my drug dealers, the person in the chemist, and the person in the off license. That's basically the only people I see in a year and a half. My world became very, very small.
Yeah. Let's just go back a little bit before the very end of your using. I mean, you had built, as you said yourself, quite a nice life. And being a DJ is something very exciting, of course, very dangerous for people like us, because it's a job that will enable, facilitate, almost expect that you use drugs. And but still, I mean, you found someone and you have 2 children and all of that. So when you lost those things bit by bit by bit by bit, what was your reaction in those moments? Whenever that happened, were you going to get angry at those people, or did you say, I didn't really want to be a DJ anyway? How did you, if I may say so, hope this is okay to say it, lie to yourself to continue to enable your addiction?
If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
Yeah, when I think back, Silvio, I'd created, somehow, I'm a lucky person. I really am in so many areas. I just seem to fall into things. I really do. I was, remember, I left school with no qualifications. They told me I was going to be a bingo caller. They put me in special needs. I've gone up to London. I've created, just through my love of music, I'm putting on club nights and I'm getting booked to play all over the place. And not only that, now I'm making music. I'm making money off of selling music to commercials. I'm working as a music director for plays. I'm working for a company that we supply music for adverts. I'm doing music for brands like Mulberry, Mercedes. You know, I have to pinch myself. I created something like, whoa, I'm bringing in money, man. I you know, but yeah, I'm burning it all to the ground because I can't stop using. Now, the progression, I didn't see it coming. Because my life seems good on the external, and it is. I'm going to all these flashy parties. I've got nice women on my arm, all that sort of stuff, the stuff. And my ego's massive. And I didn't realise what was happening. I didn't realise that, you know, I'm using more cocaine. And now after the gigs, I'm using more Valium. And now after some of the gigs, I'm now using more heroin. And now I'm using daily and da-da-da-da-da. It was all like, suddenly it's like, whoa, I'm in trouble here. And I remember getting a private doctor, like a Harley Street doctor. And I'd pay him £100 a month. And he'd give me methadone, and it was methadone tablet. And he'd give me Valium. And so I'd have that as a safety thing. But that should have been the massive wake-up call, the fact I was doing that. Now, it's surprising how long I kept hold of the DJ gigs. The other stuff I was losing because I wasn't able to hustle, because I was quite good at like making things happen. You know, I was quite good at networking and all that stuff that I'm so glad I don't have to do anymore. But the DJ gigs, I was managing to hold on to. But I remember the first one I lost, and someone said, "Sorry, young, you ain't looking so good, man." And I thought, how dare you? How dare you? What do you mean I'm not looking so good? There's nothing wrong with me. And so I started losing a few of my DJ gigs. But I'm still making all right money. But now what's happening, Silvio, is my drug habit is costing me more than what I'm making, what I'm earning. So this becomes a problem. But then what happened? My dad died. He had a terrible illness. He died, and he left me 30 grand. And this is in the midst of a daily heroin addiction and crack addiction. And I remember that 30 grand hitting my bank, and I didn't think, yeah, here we go, party for one. I remember thinking, I'm fucked. And what I was doing, Silvio, I was only taking out, say, £100 a day or £70 a day. You know, just kind of thinking, oh, it's all right. I've still got 20 grand left. Still got 15 left. Still got 10 left. Still got 2 grand left. And then at the end of that, I've got none left, and I've got a massive habit, and I'm in big, big trouble. And by this time, I'm not working much at all, and I'm finding it really difficult. And if I'm really honest, which I will be, because I am today, probably for the last, I don't know, 7 or 5 years of my DJ career, I was just going through the motions. I wasn't enjoying it. I was just doing it to get money. Whereas when I started, I loved music. The whole point, I didn't ever get into DJing to make money. I just used to love sharing music with people. It was a spiritual thing for me. Like when I was a little kid and first found, you know, the music that I discovered, the hip hop and the reggae and the funk and the disco and then the house, it was just like, I loved it. I was so passionate about it. By the end, I had no love for it. I was just going through the motions. Give me my money. I'm going to take my drugs.
So towards the very end, as you said, you didn't really see anyone. You saw what, did you say, the guy in the offie and your dealer, and that's about it. You're sort of collecting dog ends, and here you are. And it's a very, very sad life. Our question 4 is, did you ever want to die? Did you consider suicide when you were at your worst?
Absolutely, I did. Absolutely. That last year and a half, Silvio, every single morning, well, I say morning, I would usually wake up towards the tail end of the day, 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 7. And I would contemplate killing myself every single day. God knows how I didn't do it. Because I didn't know there was a way out, Silvio. I didn't. I thought I'd done all the recovery bits and it didn't work for me, and it was never going to work for me. And I just couldn't handle thinking that my life had come to that and there was nothing more left for me. And by then I am literally a gyro junkie, just getting through each day, but not doing it very well and being in a lot of pain emotionally and spiritually.
It's an extremely, extremely difficult place to be. And if to the listener, if you're hearing this and if this is you, right, please, I say this every time and it's really important, speak up. Say something to someone, even the guy at the office. Honestly, just say something to someone. It doesn't have to be this way. And you can call the Samaritans. There's National Suicide Prevention Helpline. The number is in the show notes. There's things you can do. Seek help. It is there. So let's go to our question 5, which is, we sort of touched on it a little bit, but question 5, what other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms?
And just quickly going back to that last thing, I remember a friend of mine taking his life while sober, and the statistics are higher in people in sobriety without a program of some sort. Now, the other methods that I tried, Silvio, I'd been in 4 treatment centers. So I tried that. I tried CBT. I tried counseling, hypnotherapy, psychotherapy. I tried yoga. I tried going to the gym. I tried swapping partners. I tried swapping drugs. I tried everything that I knew, and I'd go to the drug and alcohol teams, and I'm never putting them down because they're doing the best that they can do. But they would say things like, just keep busy, keep positive, and stuff that doesn't stop my head from twisting and taking me back out there. And I'll just say this, when I was sat there in that flat at the end, I was looking everything up online, ayahuasca, ibogaine. I even considered joining the French Foreign Legion. I thought that's the way out, but I was too old.
It's the most radical geographical available, I suppose, is to join the French Foreign League. Oh, crazy stuff. There's a lot in there because I also tried many of those things. Hypnotherapy certainly springs to mind, psychotherapy, of course, plenty thereof, and so on. And it was all good stuff. It just didn't keep me sober. It didn't make me stay stopped, which was my biggest problem. So I could always put it down for a few days or so and act straight and normal, and then eventually it would get. And then every time I did it, it would get worse. The binge was harder, and it was getting to an impossible point. So our question 6, and I have a funny feeling you're going to enjoy this one. Our question 6 is, did you struggle when you came in? Did you struggle with the word God?
I'm laughing because God is the most important thing in my world today. The most important thing. And when I say the word God, it's just a word to me. It's the only word that I can try and use to try and describe the undescribable. But going back to the question, did I struggle with the word God? Now, for those 10 years, which I haven't mentioned, that I was in and out of the rooms, the 12-step rooms, in and out. I was one of those people dipping his toe in, but not in. I wasn't coming all the way in. I wasn't grabbing hold of this program, the 12-step program. I was just going to the meetings and doing the fellowship, which is all fantastic and important and beautiful. But it doesn't get me, where I need to go to, that alone. So for those 10 years, I did have a problem with it. And therefore I kept relapsing. And I had a chat today with a few guys, and I was saying to them, when I look back, I've got all these guys that are trying to show me how my life can be saved, but I'm arguing with them. And I've worked with guys who the doctor has said to them, if you drink again, you will die. Right? So that's pretty clear. That's clear as anything. Mm-hmm. And I said, and they're telling me this, and I said, okay, we've got a solution. I've got a solution I can introduce you to. And they're like, okay, what is it? What is it? I say, it's spiritual. Oh, I'm like, mate, you're going to die. Yeah, but I can't. And that's how strong the prejudice can be. Now, when I came in this time, Silvio, after I've told you this story of me living in this grotty flat, wanting to die every day, and you mention the word God, I'm just like, okay, what do I have to do? I've stopped arguing. I've stopped debating. I know I'm dying.
Now, before you were ready for this, 10 years is a very long time. It is a very long time by anyone's stretch of the imagination. And you did struggle with the word God. What was your struggle?
Well, do you know what, Sylvia? It was a good question. I don't even know if I struggled with it. My ears were just shut. My ears were shut. Do you know what? I know today I hadn't been dragged to the point of surrender. There was still fight in me. There was still fight in me. I still thought that I could do it my way, even though all the evidence suggested otherwise. I'll give you a quick example. I've spent time in 2 psychiatric units and many detoxes. And one time I did a detox in a psychiatric unit, and I said to them, the people that funded me, put me in there, I said, I'm going to be fine now. All I need is a detox. I really believed that all the pain I'd been through, because I'd had so many rock bottoms, that was enough to stop me from picking up. I didn't understand I needed to get connected to this power within my soul, this divine power. I didn't understand. And I won't go into all quoting literature, but I'm going to, this bit. You know, it was only through repeated humiliations that I was able to make this humble admission of powerlessness. I haven't got any power not to pick up at certain times. And so when I could see something in the eyes of the guys in the rooms, and those guys, they were like the club within the club. They all talked about God, of spirit, steps. They were on fire. And there was other guys that were in the rooms that weren't. And I just gravitated towards these guys. But they put it really simply to me, you know, simplified it. They said, Young, have your own experience. I could not sit here, Sylvia, and try and explain God or a power. That would be crazy. But I experience it in the same way I can't explain love to you, but I experience it today. So,
Which neatly brings us to our question 7, which is, how do you experience your higher power today? And this is also the moment to share any God moments if you want it.
I've had many God moments, Silvio. Many God moments. How do I experience God today? I experience it through you. I experience it through my children. I hear it in the birds. I feel it in the wind. I see it in someone's smile when I feel this joy coming out of them. I see it in people's sorrow. God speaks to me. God directs me. I get this feeling inside, this intuitive thought that I should phone someone up, and they say, oh my God, I was just thinking about you. Or I'm thinking about you, Silvio, and then the phone goes and it's you. That's happened to us. That happens to me so many times. At first, and funny enough, I was speaking to a newcomer around this today because something happened with them. I know it's God. I know it's these spiritual breadcrumbs. For them, they're like, wow, that's crazy, isn't it? That's a coincidence. Now, when and I say this, coincidence, when those happen time and time again, I start waking up to the truth. I start waking up to the fact that now I'm connected. Now, God incidences or moments or experiences. I had one the other day. I have them every day, actually. I'm living a spiritual experience. I'm experiencing life on a spiritual plane today. I was on a meeting. I was speaking on a meeting, an American meeting, and I was speaking on it. And after it, because I always put my number in the chat, because I always want to connect, man. You know, I need you guys around me. I want to speak to newcomers. I want to speak to old timers. Love you guys. And someone reached out to me and he said, Young, I need to make an amends to you. And it was quite late at night. So I went to bed and I thought, I'll answer that in the morning. And in the morning, what he said is, would you allow me to make amends to you? And in the morning I said, of course. I'm quite curious to know who you are and what the amends is for. And he said, it's from 35 years ago. I thought, whoa, what? Anyway, I was telling you about when there was a group of us when we were 11 years old, 12 years old, sniffing glue and gas in the car parks. I'd shared that story that night and he said, I was one of those kids. And he needed to make amends to me for something that he'd done, which I'm not going to go into because it's kind of a private thing.
Sure, of course.
But he'd been thinking about that. And the fact this guy is in the program, he's in the program, he's a miracle. I happen to be speaking on an American meeting. He's been looking for me. He didn't know how to get hold of me. Bang, we're brought together.
Beautiful.
You couldn't make this stuff up. You could not make this stuff up. I can give you one more story if I may. I'm in early recovery. I'm living in a sober living house. I've got one bag of clothes. I'm on the dole. I haven't got enough money to get me through the week for food, not for going out for coffee, for basic food. And I go to see my sponsor and I say, what should I do? And I'm kind of hoping that he'll give me some money. But he doesn't do that. Of course he doesn't, because he's a good sponsor. He says, go and pray. I think, what? That's all you're going to give me? That was the best advice he could have gave me. So I went home. Because I've got nowhere else to go, I get on my knees and I start saying, please God, I'm trying to be a good man. I'm trying to be a good man. The next day, I had a phone call off a guy that had seen me back, in Sheffield where I was at the time. He knew I loved yoga because I was really into my yoga then, meditation. And he said, Young, I don't suppose you're looking for a job, are you? I've got this client, blah, blah, blah. The next day, I'm in this fancy apartment in Manchester and I worked for that company for 3 years. And I hadn't worked for 5 years. God comes to those who seek.
And that's a shared experience, if I may, very quickly. It's something that I don't talk about enough, I don't think, but the longer I've been doing this and the more I've been practicing this, the more it happens to me. I've always had God moments, actually, come to think of it. Even well before I came into the rooms, I've had many and recognized them as like, whoa, well, that's a bit weird, or, But the more I do this and the more I turn in my step 3, the more I turn my worries, my whatever it is, the more I turn it to God or to power, to light, or whatever way you want to call it. I call it the universe most often. I get answers within a day, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, but things will present themselves. Sometimes it might be a thought, or sometimes it's just a simple solution, and sometimes something extraordinary happens. The more you do it, the more it happens. It's wonderful. It's brilliant. Question 8. Which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
I want to still talk about God, Silvio.
I know.
I won't. I'll talk about this. Do you know what? This time in, Silvio, none. Not because I'm a better man than anyone else, because I'm certainly not. But I had this gift, because the best gifts that I get given never come in a shiny box with a bow and a ribbon and a balloon. They usually come as fear, worry, desperation. And I had the gift of desperation. And also I had the gift of fear, because you might think, how can fear be a gift? Well, fear was a gift because I was so terrified of picking up again that it was like that, and understanding my step 1 was like the rocket up my backside, and I was all in, stopped arguing. I just got into the steps, pen to paper in 4, bang, 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 bang. I didn't go into step 4. Oh, my step 4. I'm just like, it says fearless and thorough. Why wouldn't I be excited about it? I'm going to connect with this power. Why am I not going to be excited by that? And so for those that know me, and you know me, from that moment to this, I am all in. I am nurturing this relationship with this loving power. So, I hope that doesn't sound cocky, but that's just my experience. I didn't find any of them troublesome or difficult. A lot of practice, of course. Step 10, 11, and then 12. I have to practice this stuff. Look, Silvio, I've talked a little bit about the person I used to be. That person doesn't die overnight. There's still a part of me that can be there, that can be really sarcastic, that can be angry, etc. Now, thank God I have a step 10 practice. Someone shared the other day, they said, just because I'm a spiritual person now, don't mistake that as for some pushover. I still come from the street. I still come from this place where I used to do this, and this. But I'm on I have a different walk today. I have a different talk. The way I conduct myself is different. But thank God for these 12 steps. Life-saving, transformational, and they continue to be.
I've recently come to the conclusion that, especially for those people who just went through the steps, quote unquote, fairly easily, right? That we all really struggle the most with step 1, because it is that time that it takes us before we come in, to actually just admit that we need help and to admit that we can't do it ourselves, to admit our powerlessness in a way that is actually pretty much for everybody who I've spoken to and every addict I know, that is their most difficult step, right? Still, sometimes there's things to be learned from step processes of other people, and hence the question. So we've already touched on question 9 just very briefly there. Question 9 is, which character defects give you most trouble today?
And also, and I just want to add as a side note, and that's very correct, that's step 1. I couldn't admit this powerlessness for years. And anyone listening who maybe is struggling with some of the steps, that's all right as well. I was always told never to compare myself to anyone. Maybe that's your journey. And I've got to remember, when I say I didn't struggle this time, think how long I was struggling for. So it wasn't just suddenly, It was many years of pain that got me to that point. Character defects, Silvio. Wow. I could talk all day long. But I think my biggest one is probably judgment. I can be very judgmental. And I always smile when I'm in the 12-step rooms. And it's often new guys who say it, and they come in and they're loving it, because suddenly they feel part of, and that's great. That's fantastic. And they say, I love these rooms. There's no judgment here. I think, yes, there is. I'm judging you now. Everything. And I say that with love, and thank God, I can see that judgment today. I watch it. I watch my defects of character float in. I laugh at them. I laugh at the ridiculousness of myself. I know if I'm judging you, I'm judging me. I know if I'm being angry with you, I'm being angry with me, because we're connected. We all come from one.
Yeah, wonderful. Wonderfully put as well. Our question 10 is, what is the best thing recovery has given you?
Could talk about this all day long as well. Look, Silvio, you know me pretty well. I'm one of these annoying people that I'm pretty happy all the time. Even when life is not okay, I'm still happy. I'm still good inside. I can't believe I have this. I can't believe I have peace in my soul. I can't believe I wake up every single morning saying, thank you, God. What have you got for me today? Silvio, I can't believe this. Just over 5 years ago, I wanted to die. I had to I've just got to get through every day. My life has my whole personality and outlook upon life has changed. I cannot believe it, Silvio. Seriously. I can't believe I found a connection to a loving God, a loving power. I have my family back in my life. I have my children back in my life. My oldest son is in the fellowship. That is mind-blowing. That is another God miracle right there. I could go on and on. I found a career that I love with all my heart and all my soul. I didn't know work could be like that. I love working. I love what I do. I can't believe now I have purpose and direction in my life, because I know today life, the key to it is about being useful. And I can't believe I've found the secret to life, because I was searching for so many years, man. I was looking in the wrong places, but now I've found it, and I want to pass it on to you.
Beautiful. And for the listeners who don't know, Young works in a rehab facility. Our question 11 is, what would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict? Which is kind of two questions in one, really, but let's roll with it. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
Okay. Well, look, someone if they're wondering if they're an addict, I would take them through those chapters in the big book that gives us the qualifier. You know, there's a bit in We Agnostics, and it says something like, you know, if you're, I'm not even going to be able to quote it now. Oh, luckily, Silvio, I have the book in front of me. Of course I do.
Of course you do.
It's always, or never leaves my side. What was it someone said to me once? A big book that's falling apart is generally owned by someone who isn't. And we're agnostics. And this was, if someone was wondering if they're one of us, I would give them these questions. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, so is that you? When you stop, can you comfortably stay stopped? I don't mean for a week or a month, a year. Let's say a year. Or, when you drink or use, do you have little control over the amount you take? Because they're the qualifiers, aren't they? Whether you're suffering from this mental obsession that leads me back, convinces me it'll be different this time, and whether I go out for one, whatever that might be, I say, I'm just going to have half a gram, I'm just going to have, you know, one drink, and then I always end up, if I tick yes to those two, come on in, join the club. And what was the other question?
The other question is someone wondering if they're an addict, which we've just done, and what would you say to a newcomer, someone who's just come in?
Because also going back to someone, because I think we're so quick. A newcomer comes into the rooms, and we welcome them in with love. Of course we do, but we say you're in the right place. If I haven't spoke to that person, I don't know if they're in the right place. I've got no idea. So I need to find out about them. So to a newcomer, wow, I wish I could touch your shoulder like E.T. and show you your potential and show you what's going to happen if you launch yourself into this program all in. Now, this is the beauty about any 12-step program. I'm suffering from a life-threatening illness of addiction and alcoholism. Now, if a doctor said to me, Young, you've got a life-threatening illness, but I've got this magic pill. And if you take this magic pill, not only, but you have to take it every day for the rest of your life, not only will your illness never come back, but you will become kinder, more gentle, more loving, more tolerant, more useful. You will get a sense of purpose and direction and meaning in your life. Am I going to take that pill every day? Hell yeah. So for any newcomers, if you want what I've just described, jump all in. Get someone who can guide you. Get someone who lives this stuff, who can guide you through these 12 steps. And you know, I love it. I love it what it says in the book and how my teachers present themselves to me. They never say, you need to do this. You should do this. Phone me up, They say, we can show you. We can show you how we've recovered, John. And not just through the mechanics of the big book and the 12 steps, but by their behavior, by their actions. Yeah. What are their feet doing? Because that's as important as the mechanics of the 12 steps for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Young. And our last question. Question 12. What do you want your higher power to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
Wow. What a question. What a question, Silvio. How am I meant to answer that, man? How am I meant to answer that? Okay. You can do it all again.
Wonderful, Young. That's great. Thank you so much, Young. This was wonderful. A wonderful hour that we've spent together. I'm so glad that we were able to make it work. I know that scheduling is always a bit of an issue. You know my nickname for you. It's Ubiqui Young because you're literally ubiquitous. You're everywhere. So Ubiqui Young, I'm glad that you were here today. And thank you. I want to thank you for your honesty, particularly also in the very first questions about your journey and the struggles that you went through, you know, to be who you are today. So thank you so much for being my guest on 12 Steps and 12 Questions. Thank you for your message, for your honesty today, and for your courage and sharing.
Thank you so much, Silvio. It's been an absolute pleasure and a privilege, and it is a privilege to know you, my friend. So, and what a great job you're doing with this platform. Thank you, man.
Thank you very much.
We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-Step Recovery Program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-Step Fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not-for-profit. And you know this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.